Hey guys, Infidel 1258 here. So, like many of you, I saw this Gillette razor commercial. Um, it's essentially a 2-minute propaganda piece about how uh, toxic masculinity is in 2019. And if you haven't seen it, it's a series of individual males that are in situations that you might think are rude, dismissive, judgmental, selfish, proud, essentially every negative stereotype that men have ever been attributed or assigned is reflected in this 1.5 minute propaganda piece. And the overarching narrative of the commercial is that men have failed in so many respects, in respectfulness towards women, in listening to women, in honoring and encouraging vulnerability, and um, things that are maybe traditionally viewed as feminine. And I just want to right now reject this entire thesis, this entire idea that masculinity at its core is necessarily toxic. This is the toxic idea, that one of the two genders, and there are two genders, that one of the two genders is itself toxic, is in my mind as insane as saying black people don't have rights to vote. Black people are blank, fill in blank. How is this not prejudice? To come out and to imply that 50% of the population is, well, watch the commercial, guys. 50% of the population is what? Dismissive, judgmental, rude, excessively proud, um, um, overlooks its own failures and passes judgment onto others. There's a scene where like 10 or 20 men are standing next to barbecues and chanting the mantra, "Boys will be boys." As if I don't know any man at all, period, in 2019 that says boys will be boys and means it. I've not heard that in, I'm 37 years old, I'm going to be 38 next week. I have not heard in my life that statement, to my knowledge. Maybe when I was a child, when I was a child, that might have been something that people said 30 years ago. But people don't believe that now. And I'm a father. I'm a big brother. I help in my church with 2, 3, and 4 year olds. This is not a concept that I would embrace or I would endure. If somebody was spouting "boys will be boys" as an argument for dismissing, let's say, cruelty or rudeness or harshness, I would not tolerate it, period. And good men exist, and people that stand up for ideals about manhood exist. Masculinity is not toxic. Certain men are toxic. And this might be news, but femininity is not toxic, but certain females are toxic. The idea that we can brand one gender or one race or one culture as all bad or all good is absolute simplicity, insanity, prejudice, and that's what this commercial is in my mind. It's prejudice. It's an ongoing. It's a carrying on of the cultural narrative that we've seen for decades. Look at television. Look at media. Look at movies. How many comedies do you know where there is a thoughtful, intelligent, brave, courageous, vulnerable, sacrificial male? I don't know any. Not since, not since Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, where Uncle Phil was a wealthy, I think he was a lawyer, educated, upstanding. Oh, and he was a judge. And like even that they cast him as a judge is such a a position, a point of respectfulness towards that person's character, because a judge is actually one that judges others. And so metaphorically speaking, this individual is honorable, trustworthy, weighs evidence logically, happens to be wealthy, and a loving father and a loving uncle, takes on youth that need help and helps lift them up. This masculinity is real. It exists today in 2019, but it's not honored, it's not appreciated, it's not celebrated, because we're too busy echoing this lie that 50% of the population is toxic, and that somehow the other 50% is just perfect angels that couldn't do wrong. This is craziness. We can't we can't saturate ourselves and our youth in this crazy, insane narrative, because it's absolutely damaging to anybody that hears it. And I personally reject it. And I do what I can to stand against it as an example of what a man can be. Um, and here's what I think a man can be. I think we need to get away from this Gillette commercial where it starts talking about, slapping men on the nose saying bad, because I think that's what this commercial is. It's just a slap on the nose to all men, and it says bad. But here I'm saying, you know what? The proper approach for educating, for bringing someone along to a position you want to assert, encouraging men to grow, would be to set an ideal. Why not have a minute and a half commercial about what honorable men do today? Show men doing honorable things and raise up the ideal rather than slap down the error. If you had a child and they made mistakes, you might tell them. Of course, you're going to tell them that's not the right way to do things. You do it this way. This Gillette commercial doesn't do that, and the cultural narrative doesn't do that. It just dismisses it, critiques without construction. Where is the building up of our nation? Where is the building up of our people? Where's the building up of our men and our boys? I don't see it. I don't see it in the modern day. I see judgment upon men for failures, and yes, we fail. I fail, but good men exist that strive to reach the ideal, and there is an ideal. It's that we would be honorable, respectful, loving, generous, sacrificial, that we would stand in the gaps for those who need it, whether that's poor people or our nation when we go to war. Our children, that we would be there for them when they're being raised up, that we would be vulnerable enough to love our children openly, declaring that love daily, because they need that. They need to hear that from us. Too many children don't have that from their parents, and yes, from their dads. But just because there are many examples of failing fathers, just because there are many examples of failing men, just because there are failing examples of boys being raised up into what might be described as an non-ideal way, that does not mean that the idea of masculinity is false or damaging or dangerous or toxic. And the toxicity that I see today is actually in the hearts of those who are telling the culture, who are reiterating the cultural narrative that gender is fluid, there is no distinction between man and woman, and therefore we should all just be alike. We should all express our feelings and emotions as, I guess, as females do. It's great that that there is a feminine expression of emotion, but it's not evil that there is a masculine expression of emotion. Sometimes both are in error. I believe God created man and woman, and he made them complementary, and that neither are better or worse, but that we are both broken vessels, and together we make a whole. I think that's a beautiful image and an ideal that we should shoot for. I think when we honor the uniqueness that each gender has, we do the world and our people a justice, and we set hope in the hearts and the minds of our young ones because they have an ideal to shoot for. They have an image of what it can be, what it can mean to be a good man. And I just wanted to share that I think this Gillette commercial is absolutely insane. And I hope you agree, because if we can't agree that it's wrong to dismiss 50% of the people on this earth, to write them off, then I don't think we have even a common ground to begin a conversation about how we can grow together, how we can improve humanity. And I want to have that conversation. And so my view in closing is this. Let's recognize that there can be an ideal. There should be an ideal. Masculinity is a thing, and we ought to build it up as a beautiful acknowledgement of what it can be to be a man. You don't just get to be a man because you're 18 years old. You get to be a man because you take on the responsibility and the burden of loving and serving others sacrificially, vulnerably, willingly, with your time and your energy and your strength and your mind. That's my view of what it means to be a man. And it's not some of these images in that commercial. That's garbage and lies and poison. I reject that commercial. I reject the idea that masculinity is toxic. And I invite people to celebrate the good male leaders in your life. If leave a comment here below. Tell people that there are good men in this world and that masculinity is not at its core toxic. And while some men are toxic, we can help even those individuals grow into something bigger and better, reaching for an ideal rather than telling them how bad they are. Let's set goals for each other. Let's set goals for ourselves and aim at let's set a higher aim. That's all, guys. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope you're having a good day. God bless you.